The champagne glass in Kemi's hand trembled, sending tiny golden ripples against the crystal rim, a perfect mirror of the tremor vibrating through her entire body. She wasn't supposed to be here. She had promised herself she was done with these high society masks, the charity galas where the smiles were as cold as the marble floors, and the conversations were nothing more than strategic interrogations. But her boss had insisted. Just one night, he had said. Show your face, wear the emerald dress, representing the gallery. It's good for business. But standing near the velvet drapes of the grand ballroom in the heart of Seoul, Kemi realized that business was about to cost her everything. Because he was here. Malik. She hadn't seen him in 6 months. 6 months of changing her phone number, 6 months of moving apartments, 6 months of looking over her shoulder every time a car door slammed too loudly on the street. She thought he was in Lagos. She thought the distance between South Korea and Nigeria was enough to suffocate the obsession that he called love. But there he was, standing across the room under the massive crystal chandelier, looking like a king, surveying a kingdom he intended to burn down. He hadn't seen her yet. He was laughing at something a waiter said, adjusting the cuffs of his tuxedo, looking charming and devastatingly handsome to anyone who didn't know the monster living beneath that polished skin. But Kemi knew. She knew the way his jaw tightened right before he exploded. She knew the way his eyes went dead just before he hurt her. Panic clawed at her throat. The air in the ballroom suddenly felt thin, recycled, and insufficient. She needed to run. She needed to turn around, find the exit, and disappear into the humid night air. But as she took a step back, her heel caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled, just slightly, but the motion was enough. Malik's head snapped up. It was instant. That predator instinct. His eyes locked onto hers across 50 feet of laughing socialites and clinking glasses. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a look of dark, possessive recognition. He didn't look surprised. He looked like a hunter who had finally cornered the wounded gazelle. He took a step forward, pushing past a waiter without even looking at him. Kemi froze. Her legs felt like they were filled with lead. If she ran now, he would chase her. He would make a scene. He would drag her out, and no one here would stop him because Malik was charismatic and rich, and people rarely interfered with rich men and their emotional girlfriends. She needed a shield. She needed a barrier. Her frantic eyes darted around the immediate vicinity. To her left was a group of elderly donors discussing tax brackets. To her right, a service station. And then, standing alone near a pillar, with his back to her, was a man. He was tall. Even from behind, the cut of his black suit screamed bespoke Italian tailoring, fitting broad shoulders that held a tension she couldn't quite place. He wasn't mingling. He wasn't drinking. He was just standing there, radiating a stillness that felt heavier than the noise of the room. He looked solid, immovable. Malik was closing the distance. 40 feet, 30 feet. Desperation bypassed Kemi's logic. She didn't think. She moved. She stepped toward the stranger's broad back, the scent of expensive sandalwood, and something metallic, like rain on cold iron, hitting her senses before she even touched him. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed the fabric of his sleeve. The man didn't flinch, but his muscles tensed instantly beneath the cloth, hard as rock. He began to turn, and for a split second, Kemi saw his profile, sharp, angular, with cold eyes that looked like they had seen the end of the world, and survived it. She didn't let him speak. She didn't look at his face fully. She just leaned in, her voice cracking, barely a whisper over the sound of the string quartet. Please, just dance with me. My ex is here. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and terrified. The man stopped turning. He went completely still. For a heartbeat, Kemi thought he would push her away. She expected him to scoff, to peel her hand off his arm and leave her to the wolf approaching from the other side of the room. Malik was only 20 feet away now. She could feel his anger radiating like heat. The stranger turned fully to face her. His eyes were dark, almost black, devoid of the polite warmth usually found at these events. They swept over her face, taking in the terror in her wide brown eyes, the sheen of sweat on her forehead, the way her breath hitched in her chest. He looked past her shoulder, his gaze narrowing slightly, as he seemingly located Malik in the crowd without Kemi having to point him out. Then he looked back at her. His expression didn't change. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. "All right," he said. His voice was deep, a low baritone that vibrated in her chest, calm and commanding. Before Kemi could process his acceptance, he moved. He didn't just take her hand. He claimed it, his fingers, warm and calloused, wrapped around her trembling palm with a firmness that was shocking. It wasn't aggressive, but it was absolute. He pulled her gently but firmly toward the center of the dance floor, placing himself physically between her and the direction Malik was coming from. Before we dive deeper into this dance of deception and danger, welcome to Afro-Korea Stories TV. If you are new here, you have found a home where the heat of African depth meets the rhythm of Korean storytelling. We bring you stories that bridge worlds, showing that love, fear, and destiny have no borders. If you are ready to see how Kemi survives the night, make sure you are watching closely. The band shifted, tempo, sliding into a slow, melancholic waltz. The stranger stepped into Kemi's personal space, his hand sliding around to the small of her back. The heat of his palm burned through the silk of her emerald dress. He was taller than her, much taller, forcing her to tilt her chin up to look at him. Up close, he was devastating. High cheekbones, a jawline that could cut glass, and hair styled with careless perfection. But it was his eyes that held her. They weren't looking at her like a man attracted to a woman. They were looking at her like a guard assessing a perimeter. "Breathe," he ordered softly. It wasn't a suggestion. Kemi sucked in a ragged breath, trying to match the slow rhythm of his movements. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still shaking. "You don't know what you just did for me." "I have an idea," he replied cryptically, spinning her slowly. As they turned, the room seemed to blur, but Kemi noticed something strange. As they moved deeper onto the floor, the couples nearest to them didn't just make room. They scattered. It was subtle, but undeniable. A wealthy older couple abruptly stopped dancing and moved to the sidelines, their eyes widening as they looked at the man holding Kemi. A waiter carrying a tray of flutes froze, waited for them to pass, and then bowed his head slightly. It wasn't the reaction of people seeing a handsome guest. It was the reaction of people seeing something dangerous. "You're shaking," the stranger said. He pulled her slightly closer, effectively shielding her body with his own. "Is he the one in the grey suit? The one who looks like he wants to break something?" Kemi buried her face near his lapel, terrified to look. "Yes, Malik. He doesn't take no for an answer." "I see," the stranger murmured. His tone was dangerously casual. "And you think dancing will stop him?" "I just needed to not be alone," Kemi confessed, the adrenaline starting to mix with shame. "He waits for me to be alone. That's how he works. He corners me." The stranger's hand on her back tightened, just a fraction. His thumb brushed against her spine, a rhythmic soothing motion that felt oddly possessive for a man she had met 30 seconds ago. "You aren't alone now," he said. Kemi risked a glance up at him. "I didn't catch your name. I'm Kemi." He didn't answer immediately. He steered her expertly through the crowd, his movements fluid and precise, like a panther moving through tall grass. He spun her again, and for a second, Kemi saw Malik standing on the edge of the dance floor. Malik looked furious, his fists clenched at his sides, but he wasn't stepping onto the floor. He was staring at Kemi's partner with a look of confusion and hesitation. Malik never hesitated. Dae-hyun the stranger finally said. My name is Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun, Kemi repeated, testing the weight of it. Thank you, Dae-hyun. I promise, just one song, and I'll find a way to leave. I don't want to cause you any trouble. Dae-hyun looked down at her, and for the first time, a ghost of a smirk touched the corner of his lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a shark gives before it bites. Trouble usually finds me, Kemi, he said low in her ear. I don't think you're the one causing it tonight. The song was ending. The final notes of the violin hung in the air. Kemi's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The bubble of safety was about to pop. She started to pull away, to offer a polite bow and make her escape. But Dae-hyun didn't let go of her hand. He held it fast. Stay, he said. I can't, Kemi whispered, panic rising again. The music stopped. He's going to come over here. Let him come. The sheer audacity of the statement made Kemi freeze. You don't understand. He's dangerous. Dae-hyun turned fully toward the edge of the floor where Malik was standing. He didn't cower. He didn't blink. He adjusted his cuffs slowly, his face a mask of bored indifference. Dangerous is a matter of perspective, Dae-hyun said calmly. Kemi followed his gaze. Malik was moving now. He had decided the dance was over and his patience had run out. He was marching across the floor, ignoring the social etiquette, his eyes fixed on Kemi's wrist as if he intended to snap it. Kemi! Malik's voice boomed, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. He sounded friendly, but Kemi heard the venom. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. She shrank back, instinctively moving behind Dae-hyun. Malik stopped 2 feet away. He was a big man, broad and muscular, used to intimidating people with his size. He looked at Dae-hyun with a sneer of dismissal. Thanks for keeping her warm, pal, Malik said, reaching out to grab Kemi's arm around Dae-hyun's side. Come on, Kemi, we're leaving. Kemi flinched, expecting the grab, expecting the pain. But Malik's hand never reached her. In a blur of motion too fast to track, Dae-hyun's hand shot out. He caught Malik's wrist in midair. It wasn't a struggle, it was a dead stop. One moment Malik was reaching, the next he was frozen, his arm suspended in a grip that looked like iron. The silence that fell over the immediate area was deafening. Malik's eyes widened in shock. He tried to yank his hand back, but Dae-hyun didn't budge. Dae-hyun stood perfectly still, holding the other man's wrist with an almost bored expression, while Malik strained and reddened. I believe the lady is with me, Dae-hyun said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a chill that dropped the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. And I don't recall her saying she wanted to leave. Malik's face turned an ugly shade of purple. Do you know who I am? Let go of me before you what? Dae-hyun asked softly. He squeezed. Malik's knees buckled. A gasp of pain escaped his lips. The sound was loud enough that the band stopped playing entirely. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward them. Kemi stared at the back of Dae-hyun's head, her mind reeling. Who was this man? Malik was a brute, a street fighter who had clawed his way into money. No one manhandled him like this. Dae-hyun leaned in closer to Malik, his voice dropping to a whisper that only Kemi and Malik could hear. You have 3 seconds to walk away, Dae-hyun said, or you will be carried away. 1. Malik looked into Dae-hyun's eyes and saw something there that terrified him more than the pain in his wrist. It was the abyss. 2. Dae-hyun released him with a shove that sent Malik stumbling back 3 steps, nearly crashing into a waiter. Malik clutched his wrist, wheezing, his ego shattered in front of Seoul's elite. He looked around, ready to scream for security, but then he stopped. He saw the men. Kemi saw them too. 4 men in dark suits had materialized from the shadows of the room. They weren't looking at the crowd, they were looking at Malik. Their hands were tucked inside their jackets. They were silent, efficient, and lethal. They were waiting for a signal from Dae-hyun. Malik paled. He looked from the men to Dae-hyun, realizing too late that he had walked into a lion's den, thinking he was the apex predator. "This isn't over, Kemi," Malik hissed, though his voice lacked its usual power. He scrambled back, turning and practically running toward the exit, casting one last, terrified glance at the silent sentinels watching him go. Kemi let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for a year. Her legs gave way, and she swayed. Dae-hyun turned immediately, catching her by the elbow before she could fall. The coldness vanished from his face, replaced by that intense, unreadable focus. "Are you all right?" he asked. Kemi looked at the door where Malik had fled, then back at the man who had effortlessly crushed him. "Who are those men? Why did they—" "Staff," Dae-hyun lied smoothly, but his eyes gave nothing away. "Come. It's too crowded here. You need air." He guided her away from the dance floor, not toward the main exit, but toward a private side door. As they walked, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Kemi noticed people whispering behind their hands, their eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. She should have been scared. Every instinct she had, honed over the last 6 months, screamed that this was dangerous, that normal men don't have private security squads and can't terrify bullies with a look. But as Dae-hyun's hand rested on the small of her back, guiding her out of the noise and into the cool quiet of the corridor, Kemi didn't feel fear. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe, and that was the most dangerous feeling of all. The side corridor was cool and dimly lit, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat and noise of the ballroom. The walls were lined with silk, wallpaper, and the carpet was thick enough to swallow the sound of their footsteps. Kemi walked beside Dae-hyun, her mind racing to catch up with the reality of the last 5 minutes. The adrenaline that had spiked when Malik grabbed her was beginning to crash, leaving her limbs feeling heavy and her hands trembling uncontrollably. "Here," Dae-hyun said, stopping near a velvet bench beneath an ornate mirror. "Sit for a moment." Kemi sank onto the bench, grateful for the support. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the shivering. "He's going to wait outside," she whispered, staring at the floor. "He always waits. He has a patience for cruelty that you wouldn't believe." Dae-hyun didn't sit. He stood in front of her, one hand in his pocket, the other checking a sleek black phone he had pulled from his jacket. He tapped the screen once, then slid it away. "He won't be waiting," Dae-hyun said. His voice was final. It wasn't a guess, it was a statement of fact. Kemi looked up at him. Under the softer lighting of the corridor, he looked even more imposing. The sharp lines of his face were softened slightly by the shadows, but the intensity in his eyes remained. "How can you know that?" she asked. "You don't know Malik. He's obsessive. He thinks he owns me because he helped me get my visa 2 years ago. He thinks—" "I know his type," Dae-hyun interrupted gently. He reached out, and for a moment, Kemi thought he was going to touch her face. Instead, he adjusted the strap of her dress that had slipped slightly during the commotion. His fingers grazed her shoulder, a touch so light it was almost electric. Men like him are cowards. They only bite when they think the prey is alone. He knows now that you are not. "But I am alone," Kemi said, her voice hollow. "You were kind, Dae-hyun. You saved me there. But the dance is over. You go back to your life, and I go back to looking over my shoulder." Dae-hyun stared at her for a long moment. He seemed to be weighing something, calculating variables she couldn't see. "Let me drive you home," he offered. "No," Kemi said quickly, standing up. "I can't ask you to do that. If he sees your car—" "My car is very safe," Dae-hyun said, a dry amusement coloring his tone. "And I insist. Consider it part of the dance. I can't very well leave my partner stranded in the middle of the song, can I?" Before she could protest further, the heavy oak doors at the end of the corridor opened. 2 of the men she had seen earlier, the staff, stepped through. They wore earpieces and moved with a synchronized efficiency. One nodded at Dae-hyun. "The vehicle is ready, sir," the man said in Korean. "The perimeter is clear. The disturbance has been escorted off the premises." Dae-hyun nodded. He turned back to Kemi and offered his arm, just as he had in the ballroom. "Shall we?" Kemi hesitated. Her brain screamed stranger danger, but her heart, still battering against her ribs, whispered sanctuary. She looked at his arm, then at his face. He wasn't pushing her, he was waiting. She took his arm. They walked out into the night air. It was a humid Seoul evening, the city lights reflecting off the low clouds. Parked right at the curb, ignoring the no-standing zone, was a matte black sedan. It looked like a luxury vehicle, but thicker, heavier. As the valet opened the door, Kemi noticed the glass. It was thick, unusually thick. Bulletproof? The thought flashed through her mind, and she dismissed it as paranoia. She was watching too many movies. Dae-hyun waited for her to slide into the leather interior before walking around to the other side. As he settled in, the door closed with a heavy solid thud that sealed out the noise of the city completely. The silence inside was instant and total. "Where to?" he asked. "Itaewon," Kemi said, giving him her address, near the antique furniture street. He nodded to the driver, and the car pulled away smoothly. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Kemi stared out the tinted window, watching the neon blur of Seoul pass by. The Han River was a ribbon of darkness under the bridges. She felt a strange exhaustion settling into her bones. "You're not from Seoul," Dae-hyun observed. It wasn't a question. "No," Kemi said, turning to look at him. He was watching her, his profile illuminated by the passing streetlights. "I'm from Lagos. I came here for art. I work as a curator for the gallery that hosted the event tonight." "Art," Dae-hyun mused. "You find beauty in things." "I try to. It's hard sometimes." "Why did you stay?" he asked. "If he was hunting you, why didn't you go home?" Kemi looked down at her hands. "Because that's what he wants. He wants to shrink my world until he's the only thing in it. If I leave, he wins. I worked too hard to get here. I learned the language. I built a career. I won't let him take that from me." Dae-hyun turned his head fully toward her. In the darkness of the car, his eyes seemed to glow with a strange intensity. "Defiance," he murmured. "I like that." "It's not defiance," Kemi sighed. "It's survival. But tonight I almost broke. If you hadn't been there." "But I was." "Why?" Kemi asked, the question that had been burning in her throat finally escaping. "Why did you say yes?" "You didn't know me. I could have been crazy. I could have been a stalker myself." Dae-hyun looked forward again, watching the road. "You looked like you were drowning," he said softly, "and everyone else was just watching the water rise." Kemi felt a lump form in her throat. It was such a simple explanation, yet so profound. In a room full of people pretending not to see her distress, he had seen it and stepped in. The car slowed as they entered the narrow, winding streets of Itaewon. Kemi's apartment building was an older brick structure, charming but lacking security. As the car idled at the curb, reality came rushing back. This was where she lived, alone, and Malik knew this neighborhood. "Thank you, Dae-hyun," she said, reaching for the door handle. "You saved my life tonight. I mean that." "Wait." Dae-hyun reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a plain white business card. There was no company name, no logo, just a phone number embossed in black ink. "If he comes back," Dae-hyun said, pressing the card into her hand. "If you see him, if you even think you see him, you call this number, day or night." "I can't ask for more of your help," Kemi protested. "You aren't asking," he said firmly. "I am offering. Take it." Kemi took the card. Her fingers brushed his again, and that same spark jumped between them. She looked into his eyes, searching for a reason, an ulterior motive, but she found only a calm, dark depth. "Good night, Kemi," he said. "Good night, Dae-hyun." She stepped out of the car. The humidity hit her instantly. She walked quickly to her building's entrance, keying in the code with shaking fingers. Before she stepped inside, she looked back. The black car hadn't moved. It sat there, a silent beast in the shadows, waiting, watching. She went inside, locked the door, and ran up the 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. She threw the deadbolt, engaged the chain, and leaned her back against the door, sliding down until she hit the floor. She sat there in the dark, clutching the white card in her hand. Safe. For the first time in months, she felt safe. But beneath the safety, there was something else. A curiosity. A pull. Who was Dae-hyun? Why did the staff at the hotel look at him with fear? Why did he travel with a security detail that moved like soldiers? She pushed herself up and walked to the window. Peeking through the blinds, she looked down at the street. The black car was still there. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, she saw the rear window roll down just an inch. A hand appeared, flicking the ash from a cigarette. Then the window rolled up, and the car slowly pulled away, disappearing into the Seoul night. Kemi let out a breath and walked to her kitchen. She poured herself a glass of water, her hands finally steady. She placed the white card on the counter. Curiosity got the better of her. She pulled out her phone. She typed Dae-hyun into the search bar. Nothing specific. Thousands of results. She tried Dae-hyun Charity Gala Seoul. A few photos from tonight's event popped up on social media tags. In the background of a selfie taken by a famous actress, she saw him. He was just a blur in the background, but she recognized the posture. She scrolled down to the comments. User 77. Is that who I think it is in the back? The ghost? Seoul City Life. Don't be stupid. He doesn't go to parties. User 77. That's definitely him. Look at the guards. That's the chairman of the Hangguang Group. Hangguang Group. Kemi frowned. She typed that into the search bar. The results flooded her screen. Hangguang Group. Construction, shipping, logistics. Investigative report. The shadow economy of Seoul. Rumors of organized crime links. She clicked on an image search. And there he was. A photo from a court hearing 3 years ago. He looked younger, harder. He was surrounded by lawyers. The caption read, Min Dae-hyun, alleged head of the Cheon A syndicate, leaves court after all charges were dropped due to lack of witness testimony. Kemi dropped her phone. It clattered onto the kitchen counter, the screen glowing bright in the dark room. Alleged head, syndicate. Charges dropped, witnesses disappearing. She stared at the white card sitting innocently next to her water glass. The number with no name. She hadn't just danced with a stranger. She hadn't just danced with a businessman. She had danced with the godfather of Seoul. A cold chill washed over her, different from the fear of Malik. This was a fear of something much larger, something ancient and powerful. He had saved her. He had protected her. He had given her his personal number. Being close to me costs people things. The thought whispered in her mind, though he hadn't said it yet. She looked at the door she had just locked. It suddenly felt very flimsy. She had asked a monster to save her from a wolf, and the monster had said, yes. End of batch 2. The dance floor was just the beginning. Kemi has uncovered the identity of her savior, but knowing the truth is dangerous. What happens when the wolf returns, and the monster is the only one who can stop him? The morning sun hit the white business card on the kitchen counter, making the embossed black numbers gleam like a warning. Kemi hadn't slept. She had spent the night in a restless fugue state, her mind replaying the way the ballroom had parted for him, the way seasoned security guards had bowed their heads, and the terrifying stillness of his eyes. Minnie. Dae-hyun. The chairman. The ghost. She drank her coffee black, the bitterness grounding her. She should throw the card away. Logic dictated that she tear it into confetti and flush it down the toilet. In Lagos, her mother had warned her about men with too much power and too few words. "The devil doesn't always have horns, Kemi," she would say. "Sometimes he has a tailored suit and a smile that doesn't reach his eyes." But she didn't throw it away. Instead, she tucked it into the hidden pocket of her handbag, right next to her pepper spray. It was a contradiction she couldn't resolve. The tool of her potential destruction was also her only safety net. Work was usually her sanctuary. The gallery, located in the upscale Gangnam district, was a space of quiet contemplation. Currently, they are hosting an exhibition titled Roots and Seoul, showcasing a fusion of West African bronze sculptures and traditional Korean ongi pottery. It was Kemi's project, her baby. She had fought for months to get the funding, arguing that the earth tones of the Nigerian clay spoke the same language as the Korean fermentation jars. Today, however, the silence of the gallery felt oppressive. Every time the heavy glass door chimed, announcing a visitor, Kemi jumped, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You look like you've seen a ghost, Kemi-si," her assistant Dae-hyun noted, arranging a display of brochures. Was the gala that bad? "It was eventful," Kemi murmured, adjusting a spotlight on a Benin bronze head. "Just tired, Dae-hyun. Just tired." She tried to lose herself in the work. She focused on the textures, the lighting, and the emails to potential buyers. For a few hours, it worked. The rhythm of the day took over. She forgot about the black sedan. She forgot about the man who could crush wrists without blinking. Then the door chimed. It wasn't the polite, soft chime of a customer entering. It was followed by the heavy, confident thud of boots on the polished concrete floor. Kemi froze. She knew that walk. She turned slowly from the sculpture she was dusting. Malik was standing in the center of the gallery. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo today. He was wearing a leather jacket and jeans, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, despite the dim lighting of the room. He looked out of place among the delicate art, a bull in a china shop, radiating chaotic energy. Dae-hyun stepped forward, her customer service smile faltering. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" "Take a walk," Malik growled, not even looking at her. He took off his sunglasses, fixing his gaze on Kemi. His left wrist was wrapped in a compression bandage. "Dae-hyun, go to the back office," Kemi said, her voice surprisingly steady. She wouldn't let him see her fear. "Not here." "Please." Dae-hyun hesitated, looking between them, sensing the violence in the air, before scurrying away to the back. "You have some nerve," Malik said, stepping closer. He walked around a podium displaying a delicate moon jar, trailing his fingers dangerously close to the rim. "Leaving me there like that, humiliating me in front of those people." "You humiliated yourself, Malik," Kemi said, gripping her duster so hard, her knuckles turned white. "You attacked me. He stopped you." Malik laughed, a sharp barking sound. You mean the gangster. You think you're special because a thug like Dae-hyun decided to play a knight in shining armor. Do you know who he is, Kemi? He's a killer. He's not a boyfriend. He's a death sentence." "He let you go," Kemi countered. "He could have done worse. You should be grateful." Malik's face twisted. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, grabbing Kemi's upper arm. His grip was bruising. "I'm not afraid of him," Malik hissed, though the sweat on his upper lip said otherwise. "And I'm not done with you. You think you can just walk away from us? After everything I did for you? I own you, Kemi. Your visa, your apartment, this job. I can make it all disappear. Let me go." Kemi struggled, but he was too strong. "I'm going to come back tonight," Malik whispered, leaning in so close she could smell the stale alcohol on his breath. "I'm going to come to your apartment, and we're going to have a long talk about respect. If you're not there, well, accidents happen. Maybe this gallery catches fire. Maybe your visa application gets flagged for fraud. I have friends too, Kemi. He shoved her back. She stumbled, her hip checking the podium. The moon jar wobbled. Kemi gasped, reaching out to steady it just before it could tip. Malik smirked. See you tonight, babe. He turned and walked out, kicking the door open. The chime sounded mocking this time. Kemi stood there, shaking. The gallery felt tainted. He had violated her safe space, and he was right about one thing. He could hurt her. Malik wasn't a crime lord, but he was a petty, vindictive man with connections in immigration and local gangs. If he wanted to ruin her life, he could. If he wanted to hurt her physically, he would. The police? They would file a report. They would issue a restraining order that was just a piece of paper. It wouldn't stop him from coming to her door at 2 a.m. It wouldn't stop him from burning down the gallery. She was trapped. We are at the tipping point of Kemi's life. The choice she makes next will change everything. If you are feeling the tension, if you've ever felt trapped like Kemi, hit that like button right now. It helps us share these powerful stories with more people. And don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a good suspense drama. Now let's see what Kemi decides. Kemi walked to the back office. Dae-hyun was pretending to type, but she was clearly terrified. I'm taking an early lunch, Kemi said, grabbing her bag. Is everything okay? Dae-hyun asked. No, Kemi admitted. But it will be. She walked out of the gallery and down the street to a small, quiet park. She sat on a bench, surrounded by the sounds of city traffic. She opened her bag and took out the card. Min Dae-hyun. She remembered his voice. Dangerous is a matter of perspective. Malik was a fire that would burn everything she loved just to keep her warm. Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun was the cold ocean. Dangerous, yes, but vast, and powerful enough to extinguish a fire. She wasn't asking for a boyfriend. She wasn't asking for romance. She was asking for a nuclear deterrent. She dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Speak. The voice was immediate. No hello, no pleasantries. Just a command. It's Kemi, she said, her voice trembling slightly. There was a pause on the other end. A shift in the background noise, as if he had just signaled a room full of people to be quiet. Tell me, he said. The tone had changed. It wasn't softer, but it was focused, laser-focused on her. Came to my job, Kemi said. He grabbed me. He threatened to burn the gallery. He said he's coming to my apartment tonight. He said he's not afraid of you. Silence. For 3 agonizing seconds, Kemi thought he had hung up. Or worse, that he didn't care. That the dance was just a dance, and she was on her own. Where are you now? Dae-hyun asked. I'm at a park near the gallery, in Gangnam. Stay there. Do not go back to the gallery. Do not go home. Dae-hyun, I can't. You called me, he interrupted, his voice dropping an octave. You used the card. That means you are done handling this your way. Now you handle it my way. Stay there. The line went dead. Kemi stared at the phone. Her heart was racing. She had done it. She had crossed the line. She had invited the darkness in. 10 minutes later, the black sedan appeared. It wasn't the same one from last night. This one was an SUV, even larger, with tinted windows that looked like obsidian. It pulled up to the curb with aggressive precision, cutting off a taxi. The back door opened. Dae-hyun wasn't inside. Instead, a woman stepped out. She was Korean, with a sharp bob cut and a suit that looked sharper than a razor blade. She didn't smile. She looked at Kemi, then at a tablet in her hand. Miss Kemi, the woman asked. Yes. I am Director Lee. Mr. Min sent it to me. Please get in. Where is he? Kemi asked, clutching her bag. He is handling the issue, Director Lee said. He requested that you be brought to a secure location until the matter is resolved. What does resolved mean? Kemi asked, fear spiking again. Director Lee looked at her with an expression that was pitying, yet professional. It means Malik will not be visiting your apartment tonight, or ever again. Please, get in. Kemi looked at the open door of the SUV. The interior was plush, smelling of leather and safety. She looked back at the street, where Malik could be watching. She climbed in. The car moved effortlessly through the traffic, heading away from Gangnam, away from Itaewon, toward the hills where the wealthiest families of Seoul lived in gated seclusion. Where are we going? Kemi asked. The chairman's residence, Lee answered. It is the only place he can guarantee your safety right now. Kemi sank back into the seat. The chairman's residence. She was going to the lion's den. 20 minutes later, the SUV turned onto a private road winding up a mountain. They passed a security checkpoint with armed guards who saluted the vehicle. The house, no, the fortress, came into view. It was a masterpiece of modern architecture, concrete and glass perched on the edge of a cliff, overlooking the entire city of Seoul. It looked cold, imposing, and beautiful. The car stopped in the driveway. Director Lee opened the door. He is waiting for you in the library, Lee said. Kemi stepped out. The air up here was thinner, cleaner. She walked to the massive front door, which opened before she could touch it. The interior was minimalist, filled with art that Kemi recognized as priceless originals. She followed the hallway until she reached a set of double doors. They were open. Dae-hyun was standing by the window, looking out at the city sprawl below. He was wearing a dark grey dress shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle. He held a tumbler of whiskey in one hand. He heard her enter and turned. The look on his face stopped Kemi in her tracks. He wasn't the polite stranger from the gala anymore. The mask was off. He looked furious. A cold, controlled fury that made the air in the room vibrate. Did he touch you? Dae-hyun asked. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how she was. He walked toward her, his eyes scanning her body for injuries. He grabbed my arm, Kemi stammered. But I'm fine. Dae-hyun stopped a foot away from her. He placed the glass down, on a table with a sharp clink. He reached out, his hand hovering near her arm. Then gently, so gently, he touched the spot where Malik had grabbed her. Kemi winced. It was already bruised. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. A vein throbbed in his temple. He will never touch you again, Dae-hyun said. It was a vow. What did you do? Kemi whispered. Dae-hyun, I know who you are. I saw the news. I know about the syndicate. Dae-hyun went still. His eyes locked onto hers. He didn't deny it. He didn't try to lie. And yet, you called, he said softly. I had no choice. There is always a choice, Kemi. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, enveloping her in his scent of sandalwood and danger. You could have run. You could have hidden. But you called me. Do you know what that means? It means I wanted to be safe, she breathed, her heart pounding so hard she thought he could hear it. No, Dae-hyun said. He raised his hand and brushed a stray curl of hair away from her forehead. His touch was mesmerizing. It means you have accepted the protection of the K-on-A, and once I take something under my protection, I will not let it go. Kemi felt a shiver run down her spine. It wasn't fear, it was something hotter, heavier. Is that what I am? She asked, finding a sudden reserve of courage. Something, a possession. Dae-hyun's eyes darkened. He looked at her mouth, then back up to her eyes. The tension between them snapped, electric and undeniable. You are the only person in this city who looked at me and didn't see a monster first, he said. You saw a man. So no, Kemi. You are not a possession. You are... He trailed off, struggling with the word. A liability? She suggested. He smirked, the ghost of the gala returning. A complication, but one I am willing to manage. His phone buzzed on the table. He ignored it. Stay here, he commanded. My home is yours. No one gets in here without my permission. Not the police, not the government, and certainly not Malik. And what about you? Kemi asked. Do you need permission? Dae-hyun froze. He looked at her with a new appreciation, realizing that the trembling bird he had saved was growing claws. I take what I want, Kemi, he said, his voice dropping to a seductive rumble. But only when it is offered. He turned and walked toward the door. Where are you going? To finish the conversation with your ex, Dae-hyun said without looking back. I believe I have some closing arguments to make. The lines have been crossed. Kemi is now under the protection of the dragon, and Malik is about to learn what happens when you wake a sleeping giant. But being in Dae-hyun's world comes with its own price. If your heart is racing, hit that like button. Comment below, should Kemi run away or stay and fight beside him? Don't forget to subscribe to Afro-Korea Stories TV for the next intense chapter. The silence in the house was heavy, different from the silence in the gallery. This was a silence bought with power. Kemi wandered through the high-ceilinged rooms, her footsteps echoing on the polished marble. She felt like an intruder in a museum, surrounded by things that were too beautiful to touch and too expensive to break. Hours had passed since Dae-hyun left. Outside, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the Seoul skyline in hues of bruised purple and charcoal grey. Kemi stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room, watching the city lights flicker on, one by one. Somewhere down there, in the tangle of streets and shadows, the man she had just met was doing something unspeakable to the man she had once loved. She should feel guilty, she should feel horrified, but as she wrapped her arms around herself, staring at her reflection in the glass, all she felt was a terrifying sense of relief. And beneath that, a gnawing worry, not for Malik, but for Dae-hyun. What if Malik had a weapon? What if he wasn't alone? The sound of the front door opening shattered the quiet. Kemi spun around. Her heart leaped into her throat. Dae-hyun walked in. He was alone. He moved with a slow, deliberate grace, shedding his suit jacket as he walked, tossing it carelessly onto a leather armchair. He loosened his tie, pulling it free from his collar with a weary sigh. He didn't look injured. There wasn't a drop of blood on him, but the energy radiating off him was different. He felt colder, sharper, like a blade that had just been whetted. He looked up and saw her standing there. For a second, his expression was blank, completely devoid of humanity. Then he blinked, and the mask slipped back into place. The tired businessman, the reluctant savior. You're still up, he said, his voice raspy. It's only 9 o'clock, Kemi replied, taking a hesitant step toward him. Is it over? Dae-hyun walked past her toward the kitchen, not meeting her eyes. Malik won't be a problem anymore. He has decided to return to Nigeria tonight. I personally escorted him to Incheon Airport. Kemi followed him. Just like that? He just agreed to leave? Dae-hyun opened the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. He cracked the seal and downed half of it in one go. He slammed the bottle down on the granite island, the sound echoing like a gunshot. People can be very agreeable when they realize their other option is to disappear permanently, Dae-hyun said. He finally looked at her. He signed a document renouncing his visa. He is on a plane. It is done, Kemi. You are free. Free. The word hung in the air. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, he muttered, rubbing his temples. I need a drink. Real drink. Do you drink, Kemi? Sometimes, when I'm nervous. Good. Because I'm about to open a bottle of soju that costs more than your ex's car, and I hate drinking alone. The shift in tone was jarring. 1 minute, he was a terrifying enforcer. The next he was just a man looking for company. He moved around the kitchen with practiced ease, pulling out 2 small glasses and a green bottle that looked vintage. He poured them both a shot. "To freedom," he toasted, raising his glass. "To freedom," Kemi echoed. They drank. The liquid was smooth, burning pleasantly on the way down. Dae-hyun leaned against the counter, studying her. The harsh overhead lights were off. Only the under-cabinet lighting cast a soft glow on his face, highlighting the exhaustion etched around his eyes. "So," he said, "now that the dragon is slain, what will you do? Go back to your gallery? Pretend this weekend never happened?" "I don't think I can pretend this didn't happen," Kemi admitted. "I'm in the house of the chairman of the Hangguang group. I'm drinking vintage soju with a man the internet calls the ghost. My reality has shifted, Dae-hyun." He chuckled, a low dark sound. "The internet calls me many things. Most of them are lies. Some are understatements." "Which ones are understatements?" He stepped closer to her. The air between them grew thick again, charged with that same magnetic pull from the ballroom. "The ones about how protective I am of what is mine." Kemi's breath hitched. "Am I yours, Dae-hyun?" It was a bold question, a dangerous question. Dae-hyun didn't answer immediately. He reached out and traced the line of her jaw with his thumb. His skin was rough, calloused from violence, but his touch was incredibly gentle. "You are here," he murmured, "in my house, drinking my wine, under my protection. In my world, Kemi, possession is 9/10 of the law, but I am not Malik. I do not keep birds in cages unless they want to be there." "I don't feel like a bird," Kemi whispered, leaning slightly into his touch. "I feel like I've been sleepwalking, and I just woke up." His eyes dropped to her lips. The tension spiked, hot and heavy. He was going to kiss her. She wanted him to kiss her. She wanted to taste the danger on him. But then he pulled back. Abruptly, he turned away, picking up his glass and refilling it. "You should eat. I have a chef, but he's gone for the night. I can make ramyun. It is the only thing I know how to cook." Kemi blinked, disoriented by the sudden withdrawal. "Ramyun is fine." The moment was broken, but the energy remained, simmering under the surface. They stood in the kitchen, the mafia boss boiling water and tearing open packets of spicy noodles, while the art curator watched him, trying to reconcile the domesticity with the violence she knew he was capable of. "Why me?" she asked quietly, as the water boiled. "In the ballroom. Why did you say yes? You could have ignored me." Dae-hyun dropped the noodles into the pot. He stared at the bubbling water for a long time. "Because you were the only real thing in that room," he said, his back to her. "Everyone else, they wear masks. They smile when they hate you. They shake your hand while planning to stab you. But you were terrified. You were honest. You walked up to a stranger and showed him your fear. That kind of bravery, it is rare. It is intoxicating." He turned to face her, leaning against the stove. "And because when you touched my arm, for the first time in 10 years, I didn't calculate how to kill the person touching me. I just felt anchored." Kemi felt tears prick her eyes. "Anchored, yes. But anchors can drown, Kemi, and I am a deep ocean." He served the noodles. They ate in a comfortable silence, sitting on the stools at the island. It was surreal. Outside, he was a kingpin. Here, he was just a man slurping noodles, getting broth on his expensive shirt, making her laugh with dry comments about the spice level. "You handle spice well," he noted, impressed. "I'm Nigerian," Kemi grinned. "We are born with pepper in our blood. This is mild." He laughed, a genuine rich sound that transformed his face, making him look 10 years younger. For a moment, the shadows receded, but the world outside didn't like to be ignored. A phone rang. Not his personal cell, but a landline on the wall. A secure line. Dae-hyun's smile vanished instantly. The ice returned to his eyes. He stood up, walking over to the phone. He picked it up. "Speak." Kemi watched him. She saw his knuckles turn white as he gripped the receiver. She saw his posture shift from relaxed to rigid. "When?" he asked. A pause. "How many?" Another pause. "Do not engage. I am coming." He slammed the phone back onto the cradle. He stood there for a second, breathing heavily, before turning to Kemi. The warmth was gone. The protector was back. "What is it?" Kemi asked, standing up. "Is it Malik?" "No," Dae-hyun said grimly. "Malik was a mosquito. This is a hawk." He walked over to her, grabbing her shoulders. His grip was firm, urgent. "Listen to me. You cannot stay here." "What?" "You said this was the safest place." "It was," he cut her off. "Until 5 minutes ago. Someone knows you are here. Someone who wants to hurt me. And they know that the best way to get to me right now is through you." "Who?" "The Gumsang faction, my rivals. They saw us at the gala. They saw how I looked at you. They saw me destroy Malik for you. They think you are my weakness." "Am I?" Kemi asked, her voice trembling. Dae-hyun looked at her, his dark eyes filled with a tortured conflict. "Yes," he rasped. "God help me, you are." He grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the door. "We have to move. Now, if they are coming for the house, they will bring an army, and I will burn this city to the ground before I let them touch a hair on your head." Kemi ran with him. She didn't look back at the half-eaten noodles, or the vintage wine, or the beautiful cage she had just started to call safe. She realized then that the dance wasn't over. The tempo had just changed. It was faster, now, deadlier. And she was dancing for her life. The safe house is compromised. Kemi has gone from being a bystander to being the target in a mafia war. Dae-hyun has admitted she is his weakness, but can he protect her when his enemies are at the gate? The garage was a cavernous space of concrete and fluorescent light, smelling of cold oil and expensive rubber. It housed a collection of cars that would make a collector weep. Ferraris, Bentleys, a vintage Rolls-Royce. But Dae-hyun ran past them all. He wasn't looking for luxury. He was looking for speed and armor. He stopped in front of a matte grey sports coupe, low to the ground and aggressive. "Get in," he ordered, throwing open the passenger door. Kemi scrambled inside. The seat hugged her, the leather stiff and new. Before she could even buckle her seatbelt, Dae-hyun was in the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, a guttural snarl that vibrated through the chassis. He didn't wait for the garage door to fully open. He gunned the engine, and the car shot out into the night, tires screeching on the pavement as he drifted around the corner of the driveway. "Keep your head down," he shouted over the roar of the engine. Kemi ducked, clutching the dashboard. "Are they here? Did we beat them?" As if in answer, a pair of blinding headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. A black SUV, identical to the one that had brought her here, but moving with predatory speed. Then another, and another. They were swarming the mountain road. "Hold on," Dae-hyun gritted out. He slammed the car into a lower gear and floored it. The force pinned Kemi back against the seat. They were flying down the winding mountain road at a speed that felt suicidal. The trees were a blur of black ink. Behind them, the SUVs struggled to keep up with the sports car's agility on the curves. A loud pop echoed through the night air, followed by the sound of metal pinging against the rear bumper. "Are they shooting at us?" Kemi screamed, panic seizing her throat. "They are trying to disable the tires," Dae-hyun said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He spun the wheel hard to the left, taking a hairpin turn so tight the back wheels hung over the edge of the cliff for a breathless second. "They want us alive. Or at least, they want me alive to watch what they do to you." The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Kemi looked at him. His face was a mask of concentration, illuminated by the dashboard lights. He wasn't scared. He was in his element. This was the monster she had unleashed. "Do you trust me?" he asked suddenly, glancing at her for a split second, as the road straightened out toward the highway. "I don't have a choice." "Do you trust me?" he repeated, harder. "Yes." "Good." He jerked the wheel to the right, steering the car off the paved road and onto a narrow gravel maintenance track that disappeared into the forest. The car bucked and shuddered, rocks pinging. Against the undercarriage like hail, the headlights behind them shot past, missing the turn. Dae-hyun killed the headlights. They were plunging into total darkness, driving by memory and moonlight. Kemi held her breath, sure they were going to crash into a tree. But Dae-hyun navigated the rough terrain with surgical precision. After what felt like an eternity of bumps and jolts, the car slowed to a crawl. "We lost them," he whispered. "For now." He navigated the car onto a quiet back road at the bottom of the mountain, blending into the late-night traffic of the city outskirts. The adrenaline crash hit Kemi hard. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't unclasp her fingers from the door handle. "Where do we go?" she asked, her voice small. "We can't go back to my place. We can't go to yours. We go to the one place they won't look," Dae-hyun said. "Because it's beneath them." 40 minutes later, they were in a part of Seoul Kemi had never visited. It was a maze of narrow alleyways, neon signs flickering with broken letters, and the smell of street food mixed with exhaust fumes. It was crowded, loud, and chaotic. Dae-hyun parked the car in a nondescript underground lot beneath an old shopping complex. He pulled a baseball cap from the glove compartment and pulled it low over his eyes. He took off his jacket, rolling up his sleeves to hide the expensive cuffs. "Stay close to me," he said. "Don't look at anyone. Just walk." They emerged onto the street. The noise was overwhelming. Drunks stumbled out of karaoke bars. Vendors shouted prices for spicy rice cakes. Kemi clung to Dae-hyun's arm, her head down. He moved through the crowd differently here. Not like a king, but like a ghost. He didn't part the crowd. He wove through it, invisible. He led her into a narrow alley between a noodle shop and a laundromat. He stopped at a rusted metal door, punched a code into a keypad that looked ancient, but beeped with modern efficiency, and pushed it open. They stepped inside. It wasn't a penthouse. It was a single room, a studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and a single mattress on the floor. There was a small kitchenette, a table with 2 mismatched chairs, and a window covered with thick blackout curtains. It was dusty, smelling of disuse. Dae-hyun locked the door, engaging 3 separate deadbolts. He leaned his forehead against the metal, exhaling a long, ragged breath. "Welcome to the safe house," he muttered dryly. "Sorry about the lack of room service." Kemi looked around. It was a stark contrast to the mansion on the hill. "What is this place?" "My beginning," he said, turning around. He looked exhausted. The adrenaline had faded, leaving him grey-faced. "This is where I lived when I was 19, before the suits, before the empire. No one knows about this place except me, not even my staff." He walked over to the sink and splashed cold water on his face. Kemi watched him, realizing for the first time just how heavy the crown he wore actually was. He had billions of one, armies of men, and yet when the world crashed down, he had to hide in a dusty box from his past. "You're bleeding," Kemi said, noticing a dark stain on his white shirt just above his ribs. Dae-hyun looked down, seemingly surprised. "Ah, must have been a ricochet or a piece of the car door." "Sit down," Kemi commanded. The nurse in her, or perhaps just the woman who refused to be useless, took over. "It's a scratch, Kemi." "Sit down." He looked at her, a flicker of amusement crossing his eyes, and obeyed. He sat on the edge of the mattress. Kemi went to the kitchenette, finding a first aid kit under the sink. Dusty but stocked. She knelt between his legs, unbuttoning his shirt. Her fingers brushed his skin, and she felt his muscles contract. The wound was a shallow gash, bleeding sluggishly, but not deep. "This will sting," she warned, uncapping the antiseptic. "I've had worse," he grunted. But when she dabbed the cotton against the cut, he hissed through his teeth. "Liar," she murmured, cleaning the wound with gentle, precise strokes. The room was silent, save for the distant hum of the city and their breathing. The intimacy of the moment was suffocating. She was half naked in terms of emotional vulnerability, kneeling before the most dangerous man in Seoul, tending to his wounds in a room that smelled of lost dreams. "Why didn't you leave me?" she asked softly, keeping her eyes on the bandage she was applying. "In the garage. You could have gotten away faster alone. I'm just a curator. I'm nobody." Dae-hyun reached out, his hand cupping her chin, forcing her to look up at him. His eyes were dark, bottomless pools of conflict. "You are not nobody," he said fiercely. "You are the woman who looked at a storm and asked it to dance." "And look where it got me," she whispered, hiding in an alley. "Hunted." "I will fix this," he vowed. "I will call my loyalists. I will wipe the Gyeongsang off the map. I will give you your life back, Kemi. I promise." "And then what?" she asked. "I go back to the gallery? You go back to the mansion? We pretend we didn't. We didn't have this? We come from different worlds, Kemi. My world is blood and concrete. Yours is beauty and history. They don't mix. If we stay together, I will eventually destroy you. It is what I do. I destroy things." "Maybe I don't want to be safe," Kemi said, the words tumbling out before she could check them. "Maybe I'm tired of being safe. Malik made me safe. He locked me in a cage of safety. You make me feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, but I'm not afraid of falling. I'm afraid of stepping back." Dae-hyun stared at her. The air crackled. He leaned down, his face inches from hers. She could feel the heat radiating off him. "If you step off that cliff," he whispered, his voice rough with suppressed desire, "there is no going back. You become part of the darkness. You become a target. Forever." "I'm already a target," Kemi challenged him, "so I might as well choose who I'm running with." Something in Dae-hyun snapped. He groaned low in his throat and closed the distance. His lips crashed onto hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was desperate, hungry, fueled by adrenaline and the terror of near death. It tasted of whiskey and danger. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, as if he wanted to merge her body with his, to shield her from the world with his own skin. Kemi responded with equal fervor, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him down. For a moment, there was no mafia, no assassins, no Seoul or Lagos. Just two people trying to feel alive in a world that wanted them dead. But just as the heat threatened to consume them, a sound cut through the room. A chime. Not a phone. Not a doorbell. A small blinking red light on a device mounted near the door. A motion sensor. Dae-hyun tore his mouth away from hers. He looked at the light, his eyes going wide with horror. "Impossible," he breathed. "What? What is it?" Kemi asked, breathless and dazed. "They found us," he said, his voice ice cold. "How did they—" He looked down at Kemi. His eyes scanned her dress, her shoes, her bag. He grabbed her handbag from the floor and dumped the contents out. Lipstick, wallet, keys, pepper spray, and a small silver coin that Kemi didn't recognize. He picked it up. It blinked once, faintly. "A tracker," he said. He looked at Kemi, betrayal warring with realization in his eyes. "Malik." "What?" "When he grabbed you at the gallery," Dae-hyun realized, "he didn't just grab you. He slipped this into your bag. He was working for them. He sold you out to the Gyeongsang before I even got to him." A heavy thud against the metal door, then the sound of a drill. They were trapped, in a box, with an army outside. Dae-hyun pulled a black handgun from the waistband of his trousers. He checked the clip. full. He looked at Kemi. The softness was gone. The lover was gone. The chairman was back. "Get behind the mattress," he ordered, "and cover your ears." "Dae-hyun." "I said move," he roared. He flipped the heavy table over, creating a barricade. He took his position, aiming the gun at the door. "If they want to dance," he whispered to the steel, "then let's dance." The safe house is a trap. Malik's final act of revenge was selling Kemi to Dae-hyun's enemies. Now, cornered in a tiny apartment, Dae-hyun has to fight an army to save the woman he loves. It's a shootout you won't want to miss. The first bullet didn't hit flesh. It hit the lock mechanism of the steel door, sending a shower of hot sparks raining down onto the linoleum floor. Kemi screamed, a raw, instinctual sound that was instantly swallowed by the deafening roar of gunfire. Dae-hyun didn't flinch. He was a statue of concentrated violence, firing 2 shots through the wood of the door, aimed perfectly at waist height. A cry of pain from the other side confirmed a hit. "The window!" he barked, not looking back. "Open it, now!" Kemi scrambled across the floor on her hands and knees, glass shards from a broken cup digging into her palms. She reached the window, her fingers fumbling with the rusted latch. It wouldn't budge. Years of grime and paint had sealed it shut. "It's stuck," she cried, panic rising like bile in her throat. Behind her, the door finally gave way with a sickening crunch. A boot kicked it open, and a canister rolled into the room, spewing thick white smoke. Dae-hyun didn't hesitate. He turned, grabbed a heavy wooden chair, and hurled it through the window. The glass shattered outward, clearing the frame. He grabbed Kemi by the waist, lifting her as easily as a doll. "Go!" he roared, shoving her toward the jagged opening. "Drop to the dumpster. Don't look down." Kemi fell. It was only a 6-foot drop, but she landed hard on the metal lid of a dumpster, the impact jarring her teeth. She rolled off, hitting the wet pavement of the alley. Rain had started to fall, a cold, miserable drizzle that slicked the streets of Seoul. Dae-hyun landed beside her a second later, cat-like and silent despite his injuries. He grabbed her hand immediately, pulling her up. "Run," he hissed. "They know we're out." They ran. The alleyway was a labyrinth of shadows and garbage. Kemi's lungs burned, her legs pumping harder than she ever thought possible. She wasn't running for exercise, she was running from death. Behind them, shouts in Korean echoed off the brick walls, angry guttural commands. "To the left!" Dae-hyun shouted, steering her around a sharp corner. They burst out onto a slightly wider street, but it was a dead end. A chain-link fence blocked the way, topped with razor wire. Dae-hyun spun around, raising his gun. His chest was heaving, the blood stain on his shirt spreading, dark and ominous against the white fabric. "Get behind me," he ordered, pushing her into the shadows of a recessed doorway. 3 men emerged from the alley, mouth they had just exited. They weren't wearing masks. They were confident. In the center stood a man Kemi didn't recognize, older, with silver hair and a scar running through his left eyebrow. He held a cane, but he walked with the vigor of a much younger man. "Chairman Min," the older man called out, his voice smooth and mocking. "Running through the trash like a rat, it doesn't suit you." Dae-hyun didn't lower his weapon. "Chairman Jang, I should have known you were the one holding Malik's leash." The Nigerian boy was useful, Jang shrugged. "Cheap, desperate, easy to manipulate. He delivered you to me when my own spies couldn't. I owe him a fruit basket." "Let her go," Dae-hyun said, his voice steady. "She is a civilian. She has nothing to do with our business. This is between you and me." Jang laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "She has everything to do with it. She is the reason the great Min Dae-hyun is standing in a dead-end alley with a single magazine instead of in his fortress. She is your weakness, and I intend to break her to break you." Dae-hyun stepped forward, putting himself fully in the line of fire. "If you touch her, I will kill you," I might die doing it, but I promise you, Jang, my last bullet is reserved for your left eye. The threat hung in the rain-soaked air. Jang stopped smiling. He knew Dae-hyun's reputation. He knew the ghost didn't make idle threats. A trade then, Jang said, signaling his men to lower their weapons slightly. Your life for hers. You surrender. You come with me quietly. You sign over the shipping routes, and the girl walks away, unharmed. I'll even call her a taxi. No, Kemi screamed, stepping out from the shadows. Dae-hyun, don't. They'll kill you. Dae-hyun looked back at her. The adrenaline was fading from his face, replaced by a look of profound sorrow and infinite tenderness. He looked at her like she was the only source of light in a dark universe. Kemi, he said softly, listen to me. No, I won't listen. We fight. We fight together. Tears mingled with the rain on her face. We can't win this fight, he said, shaking his head. There are 3 of them here, and 10 more coming. I am out of ammunition. I am injured. If I fight, we both die. If I go, you live. I don't want to live without you. The confession tore out of her throat, raw and bleeding. Dae-hyun smiled. It was the most beautiful, heartbreaking smile she had ever seen. He reached out and touched her cheek one last time, his thumb wiping away a tear. You have to, he whispered. You have to live. For both of us. He turned back to Jang. He dropped the magazine from his gun, letting it clatter to the wet pavement. Then he dropped the gun. He raised his hands. Let her go, Dae-hyun commanded. If I see one of your men follow her, the deal is off, and I will tear your throat out with my teeth. Jang nodded, looking satisfied. A gentleman's agreement. Go, girl, before I change my mind. One of Jang's men stepped forward, roughly grabbing Dae-hyun's arms, zip-tying them behind his back. Dae-hyun didn't resist. He didn't look at them. He kept his eyes locked on Kemi. Go, Kemi, he mouthed. Run. Kemi stood frozen, her heart shattering into a million pieces. She watched them shove him toward a waiting black sedan at the end of the street. She saw him stumble, saw the blood on his back. She wanted to scream. She wanted to charge them, but she knew he was right. If she stayed, she was just leveraged. If she stayed, he would die protecting her. She turned and ran. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs gave out. She collapsed onto a bench at a bus stop, 3 blocks away, sobbing, uncontrollably. The rain soaked her to the bone. People walked past her, ignoring the crying foreign woman, just like they had ignored her fear in the ballroom. But this time, no one was coming to save her. She sat there for 10 minutes, drowning in grief. He was gone. The man who had looked at her with such intensity, who had cooked her noodles, who had given up his empire for her safety. He was gone. She reached into her pocket for a tissue, but her fingers brushed against something hard. The white card. If he comes back, if you see him, if you even think you see him. And something else. Before he had pushed her away, before he had dropped the gun, he had pressed something into her palm. In the chaos, she hadn't realized it. She opened her clenched fist. It was a small black USB drive. She stared at it. Why? When? She remembered the moment in the alley when he had pulled her up. He must have slipped it to her then. Her phone buzzed. She jumped, nearly, dropping the drive. It was an unknown number. She picked it up, her hand shaking. Hello? Miss Kemi? The voice was female, sharp, professional. Director Lee, the woman who had driven her to the mansion. Director Lee, Kemi gasped. They took him. Jang took him. I know, Lee said, her voice tight. The chairman's biomonitors went offline 3 minutes ago. We are mobilizing. Mobilizing? You have to save him. We cannot just storm Jang's territory without a plan. It would be a massacre. We need leverage. We need to know where they are holding him. I don't know where. Kemi started, then stopped. She looked at the USB drive in her hand. He gave me something. A drive. There was a pause on the line, a heavy, pregnant silence. "Miss Kemi," Director Lee said, her tone changing from professional to reverent. "Do you have a laptop?" "No, I'm on the street." "Stay where you are. Do not move. I am coming for you." "If you have that drive." Then the chairman didn't just surrender, he just handed you the keys to the kingdom. Kemi looked at the small black device. Dae-hyun hadn't just sacrificed himself. He had played a gambit. He had let himself be captured to draw Jang out, trusting, hoping, that Kemi would be brave enough to finish the play. He had bet his life on her. Kemi wiped the rain from her face. Her tears stopped. The sorrow in her chest hardened into something cold and sharp, something dangerous. She wasn't a damsel. She wasn't just an art curator. She was the woman who had danced with the dragon. She stood up. Her emerald dress was torn. Her shoes were ruined, and her hair was a mess. But she lifted her chin. "Come get me, Lee," Kemi said into the phone, her voice dropping to a register she had never used before. "And bring a computer. We have a war to win. We are at the climax of the story. Can you believe Dae-hyun gave himself up? That is true love." But Kemi isn't done yet. The interior of the command van hummed with the quiet, deadly efficiency of a war room. Banks of monitors glowed in the darkness, illuminating Kemi's face as she stared at the screen. Director Lee sat beside her, her fingers flying across a keyboard that looked military-grade. "He knew," Kemi whispered, her voice trembling, not with fear, but with awe. He knew they would come for him. The USB drive Dae-hyun had slipped her wasn't just a backup, it was a kill switch. "The chairman is a strategist," Director Lee said, her eyes never leaving the scrolling code. "This drive contains the ledger of the Geum-sang faction's illegal arms, deals with North Korean defectors. It also contains the access keys to their offshore accounts in the Caymans. If we upload this to the Interpol server, Yang is finished. His assets freeze instantly. His allies turn on him." "Then do it," Kemi said. "Upload it." "It requires a biometric confirmation," Lee said, stopping typing. She looked at Kemi. "Or a physical override key. The key is in the drive. But once we execute this command, there is no going back. Zhang will have nothing left to lose. If they are holding the chairman, they might kill him out of spite before we can get to him." Kemi looked at the screen. A map showed a blinking red dot. Dae-hyun's location, an abandoned shipyard in Incheon. "We don't upload it from here," Kemi said, a cold resolve settling over her. "We go there. We show Jang that we have the button. We trade his life for Dae-hyun's." Director Lee looked at the art curator, the woman who, 24 hours ago, was organizing pottery displays. She saw the steel in Kemi's spine. "You are beginning to sound like him," Lee noted with a grim smile. She tapped her earpiece. "Alpha Team, mobilize. We are going to Incheon. The Queen is in play." The rain had turned into a torrential downpour by the time the convoy reached the shipyard. It was a graveyard of rusted metal and shipping. Containers, looming like skeletons in the night. The Cheonhae tactical team moved like shadows, silencing the perimeter guards with terrifying efficiency. Kemi stayed in the center of the formation, flanked by Director Lee and 2 heavy enforcers. She wore a Kevlar vest over her ruined gala dress, holding a tablet connected to the van's mainframe. They reached the main warehouse. The heavy sliding doors were cracked open. Inside, illuminated by a single hanging work light, was a scene that made Kemi's breath catch in her throat. Dae-hyun was tied to a chair in the center of the vast empty space. His shirt was torn, and blood trickled down his temple, but his head was held high. Jang paced in front of him, swinging his cane like a pendulum. "The codes, Dae-hyun," Jang shouted, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "Where are the backups? I know you have them." "You're wasting your time, old man," Dae-hyun rasped, spitting blood onto the concrete. "I told you. I gave them to the only person I trust. The girl, Jiang scoffed. She is probably crying in a police station right now, or booking a flight back to Africa. You bet your empire on a tourist. I bet my empire on a survivor, Dae-hyun corrected him. Then you die for nothing. Jiang raised a heavy pistol, aiming it at Dae-hyun's chest. Wait. The voice rang out clear and strong, cutting through the sound of the rain. Jiang spun around. Dae-hyun's head snapped up, his eyes widening in horror as he saw Kemi step into the light. Kemi, no! Dae-hyun shouted, straining against his bonds. Get out of here! Kemi didn't stop. She walked forward until she was 10 feet away from Jiang, the red laser sights of 12 Cheon-A snipers, hidden in the rafters, suddenly appearing on Yang's chest and forehead. Jiang froze. He looked at the red dots dancing on his suit, then at Kemi. You brought an army, Jiang sneered, though his hand holding the gun wavered. But if you're snipers, shoot, I pull this trigger, he dies with me. Put the gun down, Yang, Kemi said. Her voice didn't shake. She held up the tablet. I'm not here to shoot you. I'm here to bankrupt you. Jiang squinted at the screen. What is that? This, Kemi said, tapping the glass, is a direct link to the Interpol Cybercrimes Division and the Swiss Banking Authority. I have the drive, Jiang. The one with the North Korean deals, the one with the Cayman accounts. Jiang's face went pale. You're lying. Try me, Kemi challenged. She moved her finger over the execute button. Dae-hyun was right. You're a relic. You think power is guns and muscle. Power is information. I press this, and you don't just go to jail. You become poor. You become nothing. Your men? They won't follow a broke leader. Jiang looked around. His own guards were shifting uncomfortably, eyeing the snipers and the woman who held their paychecks in her hand. Let him go, Kemi commanded. And I give you 10 minutes to run before I hit send. You can leave the country, or you can leave in a body bag. Choose. Jiang looked at Dae-hyun, then at Kemi. He saw the defeat in his men's eyes. He saw the end of his era. With a snarl of pure hatred, he lowered the gun. Cut him loose, Jiang barked at his nearest guard. The guard hesitated, then sliced the zip ties binding Dae-hyun. Dae-hyun stood up slowly. He shook his arms out, wincing. He didn't look at Jiang. He walked straight to Kemi. He stopped in front of her, ignoring the guns, the rain, and the war around them. He looked at her face, smeared with dirt and determination, and he saw the woman he had fallen for transform into something else entirely. I told you to run, he whispered roughly. I don't take orders well, Kemi replied, her eyes shimmering. Besides, you owe me a second dance. Dae-hyun let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. Kemi held him tight, dropping the tablet to the floor. Go! Director Lee shouted at Jiang. Jiang and his men scrambled into the night, fleeing the judgment that was coming anyway. Lee picked up the tablet and pressed execute regardless. A deal with a devil isn't binding, after all. 2 weeks later. The private airstrip on the outskirts of Seoul was bathed in the golden light of sunset. A sleek private jet waited on the tarmac, its engines whining softly. Kemi stood by the open door of the limousine. She wore a white pantsuit, sharp and tailored, a stark contrast to the emerald dress of that fateful night. But around her neck, she wore a simple diamond pendant, a gift from the chairman. Dae-hyun stood before her. He looked fully recovered, the bruises gone, replaced by the effortless elegance of the most powerful man in the city. But there was sadness in his eyes. The plane will take you to Paris, he said softly. I have set up an account for you, enough to open your own gallery, anywhere you want. You will be safe there, Kemi, far away from me, far away from this life. He was doing it again, pushing her away, trying to be the noble hero. Kemi looked at the plane, then back at him. She thought about the safety he was offering. A normal life. Art. wine, peace. Then she thought about the fire in his eyes when he looked at her. She thought about the rush of the command van. She thought about the power of holding a tyrant's fate in her hand. She had tasted the apple. She couldn't go back to the garden. No, Kemi said. Dae-hyun blinked. What? I said no. Kemi closed the door of the limousine, signaling the driver to take the bags back out. She turned to face him, crossing her arms. I'm not going to Paris. I'm not opening a gallery. Kemi, be reasonable, Dae-hyun pleaded, stepping closer. You saw what happened. I cannot protect you from everything. Being with me, it is a death sentence. Then we rewrite the sentence, she said, stepping into his space. She reached up and adjusted his tie, her movements possessive, confident. You need someone who isn't afraid of the dark, Dae-hyun. You need someone who can walk into a room and spot the enemy while you're looking at the exits. You need a partner, not a liability. You want to stay? He asked, his voice hushed. In this world, with me? I don't want to just stay, Kemi said, looking deep into his eyes. I want to rule. The gallery was nice, Dae-hyun, but I think I prefer the empire. Dae-hyun stared at her for a long moment. Then a slow, dangerous smile spread across his face, the smile of a king who had finally found his queen. He reached out and took her hand. Not gently this time, but firmly, an equal grip. Then let them come, Dae-hyun said, lifting her hand to his lips. Let them all come. We will burn them together. He turned her toward the waiting car, away from the plane. Where to, Chairman? The driver asked. Dae-hyun looked at Kemi. Where to, my love? Kemi smiled, a sharp, beautiful thing. Home, she said. We have a city to run. The car pulled away, disappearing into the Seoul twilight, leaving the plane empty on the tarmac. The frightened girl from the gala was gone forever. In her place sat the new queen of Seoul. The end. Wow. What an ending. Kemi didn't just choose love, she chose power. She went from fixing pottery to fixing the mafia. That is the definition of a boss lady. Thank you so much for watching this entire series on Afro-Korea Stories TV. We hope Kemi's journey inspired you to never settle for less than you are worth, even if it means taking over an empire. Here is what you need to do now. 1. Comment Queen Kemi below if you loved Ending C. We want to see the comments section on fire. 2. Share this video with your best friend and ask them, would you have gotten on the plane to Paris or stayed for the power? 3. Check out our playlist on the key screen right now for more stories of love between worlds. This is Afro-Korea Stories TV, signing off. Until the next story, keep bridging the gap.